Whoa, the race we just saw at Talladega was amazing. Cleetus McFarland narrowly missed winning his first race in his professional NASCAR career. To be honest, I still don't think enough people realize how crazy this was. Cleetus didn't only slip into a respectable finish. In ARCA, he led laps for the first time in his life, battled for the victory on the last lap, and finished second by a mere 0.111 seconds. That isn't a ruse. That is not an anomaly. At Talladega, that is a true statement. There is a lot to absorb, so today we will dissect everything related to this run. We'll discuss how close he was to winning first place, how he became the race leader for the first time, how the race played out from beginning to end, what transpired prior to the green flag, including Cleetus's fresh paint job and starting position, as well as his reaction upon taking the lead. What was Squirrel McNutt's fate in the massive collision? What went wrong during the last lap? After the race, we'll discuss what Cleetus said, what Carson Hoser said to him, how other drivers responded, and where we'll see him compete next. Let's begin with the most prominent headline. In this race, Cleetus McFarland lost by 0.111 seconds. That's it. Just a blink, 100th of a second. After one of the wildest Talladega finishes you will witness in ARCA this year, he finished second behind Andy Jinkoke, with Gus Dean in third. And that's what makes this both really painful and extremely meaningful at the same time. Yes, he lost, but he did so while being right there in the fight at one of the hardest tracks to figure out after others insisted that he had no right to be in these discussions. And I believe that's the reason this performance is so powerful. Because when a man leads laps, survives the turmoil, comes off turn 4 with a genuine opportunity to win, and loses by 0.111, people can still remark, yeah, nice run, but whatever, when he finishes 10th or 12th after chaos. Suddenly, no one can ignore it with such ease. Let's now discuss another significant aspect of the day before delving any further into the turmoil of the race. For the first time in his life, Cleetus took the lead in the race. That is far more important than the stat line alone. Because competing in an ARCA race at Talladega is not the same as driving around a quiet little circuit by yourself. In stock car racing, this is one of the biggest, fastest, and harshest venues. Everything is in motion. Everything is evolving. All the mirrors are full. In just 0.5 seconds, every lane might vanish. Not only did Cleetus reach the front, but he appeared to belong there. You could hear the shock and pure adrenaline hitting him simultaneously when he eventually took the lead. Like this, like this, like this, he said before diving right in. He later declared, "Mark my words, I am winning this race," when he was still leading. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am," he continued over the radio. "I'm living the life of my dreams. There is no other way to describe it. I am grateful to everyone who has supported me. I'm furious. I'm thinking, brother, this is fantastic. This is fantastic. Biff should be here, I wish. DGA, baby. DGA." That's the reason why these kinds of situations resonate. It lacked polish. It wasn't business-related. It was unadulterated. In the greatest manner conceivable, it sounded like a man who was in shock at how his own life had changed. The setting for the entire event made it even more bizarre. So let's go back and discuss what transpired before the race. Cleetus did not begin close to the front, to begin with. Owner points were used to choose the lineup due to weather conditions, which placed him in 20th place. Thus, this was not going to be given to him from the beginning. He had a lot of work to do. Second, he had a completely different appearance. The number 34 in the picture you sent has that vivid, screaming green. It really stood out because of Sam's spray wax paint scheme. It appeared loud, humorous, daring, extremely online, and yet somehow race-ready all at the same time. It was the ideal fit for Cleetus. Additionally, that paint job brought even more attention to the run before the event even began, since Talladega is already one of those locations where energy and image are important. Then there were the skeptics. Talladega truly answered the majority of his questions. Therefore, I simply want to spend a moment here. However, Kyle Petty recently stated, "Don't come here if all you are is an internet sensation because you've got no place on a race course." There was that quote everywhere. And regardless of your prior opinion of Cleetus, this was not a clown show performance. Thus, it will be replayed frequently after what he just accomplished. This man wasn't merely being fortunate and staying out of the way. This driver led laps, made genuine moves, moved through the pack, and almost won at Talladega. Let's now discuss the actual course of the race. Because one of the main reasons this run felt so genuine was the way Cleetus reached the lead. He didn't just sit about trying to survive from the beginning. He entered the top 10 right away after starting in 20th place. Then he continued. He had already risen to second place by the competition break. Because it was now more than just a respectable recovery drive, it in and of itself was enough to draw attention. He was now in the race's serious phase. As I saw it all happen, I noticed that he didn't appear to be in a panic. He appeared occupied but not overburdened. There's a distinction. He was moving, reading runs, receiving pushes, and forcing himself in situations where you would typically either bail out or crash if you were uncomfortable. He didn't do either. After that, there was a restart, and everything was different. In the most Cleetus way imaginable, Cleetus said that he liked nothing more than a good old drag race after his team had been explaining the rules and what to do on the restart. Then he walked out and demonstrated it. He started beside Gio Regiro on that restart, gave it a shove, and took the lead for the first laps of his ARCA career. After that, the race simply continued with them punching each other. He took the lead, lost it, and then regained it. He continued to battle. There were near misses, lane changes, restarts, and shovels all over the place. He continued to demonstrate that he was learning in real time despite everything. That is among the most fascinating aspects of the entire narrative. To be honest, Cleetus didn't act as though he had everything worked out after the race. In fact, he outlined his areas of improvement and what he still needed to learn. I gained a lot of confidence today because you realize you can actually move the car around a lot when you're rubbing like that at 180, he remarked. And since someone was usually on my bumper when I was tight, I learned more about drafting than anything else. And I learned that if someone is pushing you hard, you have to anticipate the car getting really tight, or you will run out of steering. When I got into the 97 coming out of turn 2, I ran out of steering. That statement comes from someone who is thinking about the race like a driver rather than merely responding like a content writer. Then he said, I think the hardest part on a super speedway is having the patience to wait for the guy behind you. And it's just so much chaos, and I'm starting to get the car control down, so that's not so much of an issue for me, but probably just making decisions that don't suck. In addition to being humorous, its lines reveal his exact developmental stage. The next step is still making decisions under pressure from pack racing, but the car control and confidence are getting better. The race also took a sharp emotional turn after the massive incident. George Siciliano, well known to most fans as Squirrel McNutt, was one of the greatest names involved in the massive pileup that occurred late and killed multiple drivers. After being demolished in that crash, Squirrel finished out of the race in 29th place, which must have hurt because there was a lot of enjoyable shared YouTube energy over the entire Talladega weekend. As a result, one of Cleetus's closest competitors was eliminated, even though he was still somehow alive in the fight for victory. You don't really have time to sit with any of it in Talladega. Simply put, you are reset, re-racked, and thrust back into the madness. The last lap resulted from that. At this point, the entire race descended into heartbreak. Cleetus restarted fourth in the one-lap shootout, but it was still close enough to cause harm. The pitch was quickly rearranged. Kimmel made an attempt. Others vanished. Just when he needed it, Cleetus gained momentum, and all of a sudden he was back in the battle, coming out of the last corner. It all boiled down to a decision made in an instant. After Cleetus, Music, and Gustanine got together and began banging doors, Andy Jenkoch was able to take the victory by slowing both of them down just enough. After that, Cleetus did not avoid accountability. I think I needed to calm down and wait for my help at the end of the race, and I didn't do that, he stated. I ultimately took the initiative on my own, and that's most likely the reason I came in second rather than first. Then he went on to give an even clearer explanation of the larger lesson. Your assistance is more important than anything else. Thus, you cannot win this race by making all of your own judgments. And after today, I have a much better understanding of that. That is such a significant lesson because, although he did lose the race, his explanation demonstrated that he truly understood why. And it's the kind of lesson that transforms an absurd near miss into something helpful the next time you find yourself in that same situation. Cleetus was emotional but incredibly optimistic after the race. Probably the coolest damn thing I've ever done in my life, he remarked. For Greg Biffle, I did it. It was incredible. And to be honest, it was much simpler to be at the front than the back, which was nice to finally experience because I was just making every effort to do everything correctly, even though I still made a few mistakes. However, after I was up there, I turned left to see Mr. Sam and Greg Biffle. And that was the best race I've ever participated in my life. So what a crazy racing day. Then he acknowledged his team as well, stating, "My team with Kevin Hamlin did such a good job. I also received a fantastic automobile from Rhett Jones Racing. To be honest, it was perhaps the most enjoyable time I've ever had while wearing clothes. It was completely crazy." That's the kind of post-race comment that says it all, Talladega. He was aware of his proximity. He was aware of his faults. But he also recognized that today was a turning point. This is where things get even more intriguing. So let's go on to the Carson-Hocevar section. After closely following Cleetus, Hocevar was completely astounded by what he witnessed. "You might actually win one," he said straight to him. "I'm not merely laughing for the camera, either. In fact, you could prevail. You're going to do this just fine. I have no doubts about that." It felt like the entire venue was packed, so you ought to have heard the audience when you took the lead. That is a really positive endorsement. Hocevar didn't end there. "I thought so," he remarked, referring to the last lap. "Yes, or at least I believed he would have a chance. And all any driver in a race car wants is a chance. I kind of hollered at everyone that even though he was fifth, I believed he was going to have a great run when I saw them off of two and how they were split out." He continued by saying that it would have been the location of the races and that he was probably 2 in from avoiding Gus. However, it only cost him that when they were infatuated. The unpleasant truth is that final section. 2 inches. That pretty much sums up the day's events. Hocevar also made a really insightful observation regarding Cleetus's nature and the reasons why people continue to find him appealing. He claimed that since he isn't really a race car driver in the conventional sense, it was just entertaining to watch him there. It's interesting to observe how he has evolved and where he comes from. The finest Carson line of all, perhaps. He'll probably leap out of the car in the same manner whether he finishes in 31st place and crashes upside down or wins, so it's fun for me to come here and watch. That is very accurate, and it plays a significant role in the explosion of this run. The other drivers responded as well, and the whole atmosphere was far more polite than some may have anticipated. Jake Bowman stated, "To be honest, it's really surprising how good he's really doing with very little experience. He undoubtedly has some influence over the vehicle, right? But you just need more laps, isn't that right?" Because it is genuine praise, that quote has significance. It is truthful. He claims that although Cleetus has potential, he still lacks experience. "Cleetus was really fun to race with," Gio Ruggiero said, acknowledging Cleetus' actions during the race. "Throughout the entire race, I thought he was making very nice maneuvers, but I was a little taken aback when he broke up the top lane. That is respect, once more." Despite his lack of polish, it's obvious that the field no longer views him as a sideshow. Where will Cleetus be seen next? He is anticipated to return to the O'Reilly vehicle and continue constructing from Nashville, which is now the next major planned stock car stage. And I think it's clear that the energy surrounding that comeback will be very different after a run like this. The question of whether Talladega belonged was a major topic of discussion prior to him. Since Talladega, the focus has turned somewhat to how quickly he can truly develop. And that's a huge shift. If you like this analysis, please hit like and subscribe to NASCAR Central to help us reach our goal of 4,000 channel subscribers and 100 video likes. And honestly, tell me one thing in the comments. Did Cleetus's final move cost Talladega the victory?